I've done at the previous meetings. The adjustments are all listed here, broken down by school or department. And the total reductions from the original ask in terms of these reductions is $514,534. That would put us at this amount. Our starting point was this amount. So if I subtract the total reductions, we land here. So I just plug that number in. And then additionally, in the last meeting, we started to talk about the governor's proposed budget. And so we've had a lot of discussions about what is the likelihood that the governor's proposed budget will land at where it currently is. What are the things that we feel confident that we can count on to a reasonable degree, and what are the things that are still in question? So what we looked at is that the governor's projections include some increases in both categorical aid and the funding formula itself. And we know that the funding formula changes are really an effort to address the enrollment shifts that have occurred as a result of COVID. That is the variable right now that is least likely to end up being exactly what the governor suggests. There's a lot of talk about where adjustments need to be made. But in terms of the categorical aid, we know that the governor started to adjust categorical, and particularly for us, it's in the area of regional transportation. He started that adjustment last year. And then for this budget that we're working on right now, he wants to finish that process and get us to the point where we're fully funded at the level that the law suggests we should be. So at this point in time, what we've done is build in the changes to the categorical aid because we feel more confident that these things will happen. And we did not build in the recommendations for increases to the funding formula to adjust for enrollment changes. And I think that message is fairly consistent with what was presented at the school committee workshop a couple of weeks back. Yeah. So it's, I just want to make sure that we're all singing from the same hymn. The group home aid actually went down a little bit. What I have here is what we were funded for this fiscal year, and this is what is projected under categorical for the governor's proposed budget. High cost special education, what we got for this year with 179,859, that is projected to go about $80,000 higher, $70,000 higher, no, $80,000 higher. And it has to do with adjusting the limit at which point districts get reimbursed for expenses that go beyond that limit. That's an adjustment that does impact pretty much every public school. There's a slight adjustment for us in terms of English language learner support. And then the big one for us is regional transportation. So for the current fiscal year, we're at about 1.4 million in reimbursement for regional transportation. And the projection is that that will go up to 1.75 million roughly. So it's a pretty significant increase. Those are all increases in revenues, or in total, it's a pretty significant increase in revenue. So let me just show you what happens if we plug in where we are currently with the operations budget adjustments, and if we build in those adjustments to the categorical aid as a revenue. What that does for us, and we only need to look at the second one, which is the calculations, including the rolling average, the new rolling average method that we're using. It brings the increase in terms of what we're looking for from the towns to $671,000, about 2.79% for Exeter and 2.05% for West Greenwich. So that is significantly lower than we were at the last point. But that's not everything. The other things that we talked about are listed right here. At the last meeting, I presented, and I'm going to pull that screen up again in a minute, but I presented several items that either were never included in the operating budget or they were included in the operating budget, and they're actually still there. That if we make a decision that those items can be transitioned into the capital school improvement account or the capital technology account, that would allow us to remove another 290,000 plus from the operations budget. So if I remove 290,695 from the budget, which started here, it would put us at this amount. So I'm going to show you what happens when I plug in this amount. Paste it. 35,97668. Okay. So if we remove those items from the operating budget, it lowers the overall number to this. And let's see how that impacts the bottom line. We would now be at 1.74% for Exeter, 1.01% for West Greenwich, and the total new money would be 380,141. And just as a reminder, there is roughly a $300,000 increase because of the second step of moving into the plateau payment for the bond. So the $380,000 in new money requests, 300,000 of that we can attribute to the bond. So we're in a pretty good place, but we're still not done because these are two things that we're not ready to finalize at this point, but Tish and I have been following the health account. And once we have the final January report, we feel pretty confident, and we'll confirm once we have the January expense report, that we will be able to shift from a projected 4% increase in healthcare to a projected 3% increase in healthcare. And every percent is roughly $90,000. So if we build in that percent change, that would result in an additional 90,000 in savings. And then I planted the seed at our last meeting, but there is going to be a proposal that Ms. Dents is going to talk to you about at the next meeting on a special education program. And it's pretty exciting, so I don't want to give it away, but it will cost money for us to implement. However, implementation of that program will allow us to save more money than it costs to implement. And so we're rounding off roughly a projected savings of about $100,000. So that's also a possibility that we'll talk about on the 14th. So if we build in those two additional adjustments, the new amount would be this, 34,907,668. And let's go check out the bottom line. It would be $190,000 in new monies, 1.06% for Exeter, 0.33% for West Greenwich. This really has to do with the population shift, which was definitely impacted by the rolling average. This is what it would have been without the rolling average. This is what it is with the rolling average. And then there's one more variable that has a positive impact for us. and that is new career and technical tuitions. We are at the point right now where we're projecting 4. We've been pretty consistent that it's been 4 or more each year, but we're not confident that we can predict more than 4 yet at this time. We haven't really even started the process of advertising at this point. So we'll continue to monitor, but comfortably at this point, I'm going to build in an additional 4 tuitions at $16,000, although that varies from town to town, but we'll call it 16,000. That would be an additional $64,000 in revenue and bring our CTE tuition revenue to just shy of $500,000. So if I build that in 498,333. And the bottom line is $126,000 worth of new revenue, 0.83% impact to Exeter, 0.10% for West Greenwich. So that's where we are and where we're looking as we continue to move forward with monitoring and adjusting through the month of February. And the vote on our budget begins on the very last day of February. The 14th is a Tuesday. The 20th is a Tuesday. So we have meetings on the 14th and then on the 28th, which is the vote day. So that's big picture, right? I mean, we continue to make progress, and if we look at these numbers at this point, if all of these things come true, we're in a really good spot in terms of the total impact on the 2 towns. So, any questions on the math there at all? Okay. Let me just. Sorry. So in our last school committee meeting, I passed out this list of capital projects. And these are items that, the ones that are not yellow, these are items that were pulled out of the operations budget, or I'm suggesting they get pulled out of the operations budget. And then there's an assignment made to either capital technology or capital school improvement. In total, and I've listed every one of the projects. So there are items from Steve, there are items that were listed in the operations budget, which I have not pulled out yet because we haven't had a vote to move money around. And then we also have the technology requests as well, which are all listed here. So I am not an expert on every one of these areas, but the list includes, like I said, items that were included in the operations budget, and then items that have been identified by Jeremy as the technology lead and Steve from maintenance for items that need repair, items that have been identified throughout the course of the year as an emergency expense. And so we wanted to be comprehensive about this and make sure that we asked one time for a transfer of funds so we could take care of all of these items. So I thought, and by the way, if we add all of the items up that are included in the operations budget, it is a total of $290,695, which is consistent with what I showed you in the last couple of presentations. So that would come out of the operations budget and allow us to move closer to the under 1%. What I thought we could do first, and particularly because I know that Steve has another engagement this evening, is taking a look at the items that are listed under capital school improvement or under capital technology. Are there items that people had questions about? Because we have the experts here that can help to address those concerns or questions that you have.
So I understand this properly. It's currently in the operational budget, pull these out, stick them under capital projects.
Yeah.
And
Under capital school improvement, which is a separate account.
does that come out of capital projects?
It's a capital project line, but it's not the same.
It's capital reserve, it's not the housing aid fund that's reimbursable from the state. It's just reserves that we set up about 5 years ago, Jim. So that, we can reduce the obligation of the towns and by not inflating the budget, but by not including them in the budget for the maintenance of that, requirement year over year, it's not a concern for the towns because it would be a vote of general fund unassigned balance transfer to these capital reserve funds.
And really, the feedback that we received is that there were in the past items that were considered like a one-time expense that were included in operations budget, which then if it gets voted in as an operations budget expenditure, then it follows the maintenance investment. So these all come out and then they're paid for, but it has no impact on maintenance of effort because the overall operations budget was lower.
So, which might know is that Exeter has a residential impact fee.
Yes.
Right, so some of these things, if they're being called out separately, could be eligible for reimbursement from that fund as opposed, which is a running fund, right? You know about it. And it is not, if we can manage to get it under based on subscription under that fund, that means it doesn't come up with taxpayers burden, right?
Yeah, it's not a very big one, I think, is development is down, I was in the council, but there's the funds for that.
Yeah, so we haven't drawn on it. If you don't use it, it goes back to the developer.
Right, after so many years.
So, yeah, so. If and when this money gets solidified, which is the end of February. Maybe you can follow Maria
Oh, yeah,
and, so there are.
sure.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
This stuff.
Thank
All right.
you.
I have other questions, but
Okay. Anything on the technology, anything on the projects that are identified here?
Steve, under, the high school parking area to major repairs, 2,000, is that the lower part over here?
Yes, that's the one that doesn't drain out because there's roots
Just
going
pipes.
through all the pipes.
Okay, oh, just clean out the pipes, essentially.
They've done that several times. It only works for like a year, so they gotta really open it up completely. We've never had that done, so.
Okay.
I have a question on the phone upgrade. So I've been through a couple phone upgrades, and generally what happens is we get new phones and then it comes with a huge new service bill that was included in whatever quote we were getting. And the phone upgrade merely hardware or is it a whole new system? that's
No,
required?
it's all new service, and it is included in the operation.
Okay.
There's a couple, so the way it's budgeted right now. I think we would take care of the hardware costs so that we're not incorporating that into the maintenance of effort, and then. We can stretch out, phones don't go bad, they sit on our desk, as long as you can get security upgrades for them, more fine. And then, I don't know whether we'll land with a cloud service or a combination of both. We're gonna see how the shake out. But we could translate some of that operating money that I budgeted into a lease to purchase new phone system hardware, like not the phones themselves, but like the main system units, instead of a monthly spend. Because if you can save monthly spend, I like to do it.
Yeah, I was wanting to make sure that we accounted for increase of fees or service charges, whatever it might be.
let me know when you're good, because
I'm fine with it. We're good.
I have no more questions. Good, okay. So. Get this out of the way. And then do you want this back up? Or are there other questions that are more specific that we can help address?
When you say specifically, you're talking about departments.
Yeah.
Line item.
So I'll just leave this up for now in case I need to go back. And you want to stop? Yep. And I forgot to say, all of our schools are represented. If there are any questions about Wallingford, the principal is not here this evening because she is at a PTA meeting that's running at the same time, but I asked her to keep her phone on. And if there are any questions that I need to ask her, I just have to text her and she'll get right back to me so you can get an answer.
I'll try my hardest to be involved, but.
So on for special education, I think, there are not, they could verify that. This is, special service. And there was a 37% increase under tuition to the center, going from 436, roughly $180,000 increase. There, that would start at that is because of now. And they're a new student. That's the deal.
That's a student that we're addressing having that Exeter House.
Okay, so that's the new student that has become our responsibility from
I
the
guess
Exeter House.
you mentioned that.
Yes.
And so this goes back for day.
Correct. That is correct.
Now, starting. Fiscal obligations. There's this line item that occurs in all. The schools and the for EWG contract for the $2,000 trust, $10,500. It starts under fiscal obligations. Right, audit year 25,000. I got a feeling that's just an audit, but I'm looking at the reimbursement of courses and conferences, EWGTA contract, $2,000, and that $2,000 occurs at all of the schools. Right, EWG, blah, blah, $2,000. EWG contract, $2,000 all along. Yeah.
I can-
School EWG.
I can answer.
What's that?
I can answer.
Okay, go ahead.
So in the last contract, or maybe the contract before, so it's been in two versions of the contract now, there was an agreement that there would be a set aside fund, which is currently a total of $15,000 a year, that where teachers could attend workshops or take courses related to their content. And the district would reimburse up to a certain amount of money per teacher. But that total is capped in the contract at $15,000. That was an agreement that was made a couple of cycles ago. And so it does show up in all of the schools because we don't know which teachers are going to apply for it. So we just take the $15,000 and split it up over all of the schools, and then we adjust based on how it's utilized throughout the year. But that's the contract.
When I looked at this, I said, oh, this is something related to contract negotiations.
Yes.
That's how I interpret this. In other words, so it's got nothing to do with that. It's just about really enforcing for instructors.
Correct.
And they have to be approved by you.
Yes.
He has to approve it. They just.
No, I thought it was completely different. Contract negotiations.
Have the teachers been taking advantage of that?
Yes.
So, On the matter of, state aid. In the past. We've still case today, that it actually comes to us by half. And then you guys like add it together in addition, this is our state aid. I'm kind of curious, you know, what is our state aid for each time, because you do look at the, you know, the formulas with, program. It's based on the ability of the towns. I mean, that's a big one of it. It's fed down, but it's also the ability. So in other words, if you have a big ability to pay your bill, we don't give you as much money, essentially how it works. So I was curious how, since we don't have a breakout, how are we doing? Do you have that in front of you?
So on the governor's 2024 recommended education aid. Again, that includes an increase that we didn't completely budget for because we're not confident. But the total aid to Exeter West Greenwich is listed as $4,986,858. So it is just shy of 5 million. Exeter, 2,664,878. West Greenwich, 2,321,980.
Yeah.
So there's about a 300 and
Yeah,
yes,
you don't have it from the previous year, right?
not in front of me, but I have the reports from previous years.
Yeah, I'm just curious, because in other words, you know.
Mhm.
So it's obvious that the wealthier communities, right, if the wealthier you are, as a community, it doesn't mean family income, which is another area that they choose. In other words, they don't get individual family income, right? It works against you. Right, so if you have a lot of assets, a lot of capacity to pay a bill, to raise income for your municipality, they say, well, you don't need as much. So I was curious, and that's been part, a contributor to our loss of funding, which was at that time. This predates Staranakis, you know, we used to get, I think it was $1,200. And we're at half that level now. And yeah, I think, you know, there's no doubt there's a contribution from a loss of income, right? We've lost about a third of it, right? By 22,008,003, where we are today, whatever the number is, 50, 60, whatever it is. But the other part of it is, you know, asset wealth.
This goes to the question that I asked at the conference where Providence posts 80% reimbursement on the back to the state, we get 13. And to Paul's, you know, it is split by town, and Exeter has a higher state contribution than West Greenwich because of the difference in the wealth of the community. And it's gonna get worse as they move from the lunch formula to the food stamp formula. So, because we have no control over that. There's no way to manage that.
Yeah, so, you know, it's one of those things that are out of our hands, and it seems to work against us as two communities, you know. You get less money, right?
Yeah.
And depending on how successful we are in economic. The other thing that concerns me, of course, is the rollout of, you know, into school, which is not really relevant. But it comes to cost versus performance, right? Cost versus results. And I guess this would be more appropriate for our meeting in spring when we meet with that's correct.
Those meetings are scheduled again later in the spring.
Right, and I'm gonna be concerned about, you know, our RISE Act test scores and our institute scores. 50%. Where it's not really, it's kind of a gray area here right now, but. In other words, making sure that, you know, the sheet that I sent out, right, I mean, it's not a very good illustration. it actually shows that we're not any longer the most expensive school district, at least in this area. At least in the math of the two provinces. Yeah. I don't know if I agree with their math, they knew that, but the math they used that older sheet, fiscal year 21, which is not bad. Maybe they're gonna be 22, yeah, done, you know, shows that, you know, we're about the same stuff. Cost per. So, and I try to see. Sure.
Can we get back to the budget? We're here
Just
just,
going back to the cost per.
the cost per student is the cost per student, it's based upon the overall budget and the round formula, and the formula varies from
Yeah, no, I.
district to district.
Spreadsheet that I got off, or it is, but I'm saying, but our costs are student.
Yeah.
And certainly budget may not be linear here, but ultimately we are concerned about the costs. Right, I mean, that's another way of looking at our costs. See that? Yeah, that's all right to do. All right. That's it. Oh, if there's any further, so we have a meeting is it?
We have a meeting on the 14th, and then we have a meeting on the 28th.
14th is both.
Oh, no, that meeting's on the 16th.
60. Oh, the school committee meeting on the 14th.
Right.
Correct.
So if there's any other.
We'll know on the 14th. Yep, ahead of the 16th.
And then the votes, if the school committee is going to vote in favor of shifting money from unassigned to the reserve fund so that I can remove the list of items from the operating budget, that vote would happen on the 14th. I'll make all the adjustments in the budget and then report out on the 16th when we have the town councils present. Because that vote has already been taken, so I can build it in as a deficit.
Yeah, and given the new rules around maintenance of effort, it's advisable that we move from the general fund and we move that money.
Yeah, we talked about that several years back because we hadn't utilized this strategy, but every year there's something that comes up, right? Something that needs to be repaired, replaced, upgraded, whatever. I mean, nothing is really a one-time expense because even something new eventually needs to be replaced or upgraded. But it's not a recurring year after year expense. So every time something like that is included in the operating budget, you don't get to pull it out the following year because of the maintenance of effort requirement. Once it's in, maintenance of effort is in play. So we pull out these one-time expenses so that they're not included in the operating budget. And what we build in to the operating is just those recursive costs that happen year after year.
So the increase in debt service, which is not like operations, it's $300,000 for the 2 ways, right? About. So roughly, and you've been working in the whole area. Yeah.
The last report that I gave both the treasurers, compared to where we're at right now, they should be very pleasantly surprised. Because we've come a long way since the initial drafts were put together.
Any other questions?
Let's ask the administrators, is there anything you guys want to call out in your requests that you feel about a school committee? In particular, a specific request or program? We're going to be doing a lot of work on cybersecurity. We did an evaluation with CISA, went through 4 hours, Tish, Jim, me, and Bob Ross before we left, and to get like a baseline of where we're at versus where CISA would like to see us. And we have a lot of work to do. So we both have been talking to the Rhode Island Trust, who's done our insurance. We have some pretty strict guidelines, and we'll get cybersecurity insurance next year. So we're kind of leaning on those goals, and all that's included in one very much. Is there a follow-up this season, once that stuff's been implemented, to see? We plan to do an evaluation on a regular basis, maybe semi-annually, to see how we're progressing against the, standard. Those are anticipated. I knew this.
Yeah, and this stuff's been talked about for years and years and years, in capital projects.
So is it, did you take both?
No, I knew that we were gonna be facing I knew we had a lot of work to do on cybersecurity. I didn't realize just how much they wanted done in 1 year, but it's all in the budget.
Oh, it isn't.
Yeah.
So it's an anticipated expense built in the budget.
Yeah.
Is it under the pull out, it's in pulled out of the aspiration?
No, because all of this stuff would be, services that we require ongoing. So
Okay.
if you notice, the technology portion of the budget increased quite a bit. If you look at it year over year,
So-
that's most of it's that.
Yeah, but I mean, some of it is in that hardware request.
The hardware request does take care of some of the, most of it is on this.
So what is identified?
Yes,
In the budget?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't want to jump in, because the administrators can say anything that they want. I mean, we talk so frequently that I just want to point out things that I've mentioned before. Built into this budget also is the next full day classroom at the preschool. So that is a pretty popular parent community request for our 4-year-old children. We have one full day classroom. It's the first time that we offer full day preschool this year. Next year, we're moving to a second full day classroom, 4-year-old children. That is built into the budget as well. And then all of the requirements that are connected to implementing the new curriculum. So I don't know if you heard about that at your Saturday workshop, they might have talked about it, but there are a boatload of requirements around high quality curriculum in math and ELA reading. And it's hundreds of thousands of dollars of expenses if you look at the K-12 program. We budgeted for about 95% of those expenses through the ESSER funds that we received because it was an allowable expense. We are on target to meet all of the requirements, all of the deadlines that are set by legislation. And none of it is in the operating budget because we've funded it alternatively, therefore it also doesn't impact the maintenance of effort requirement. So that's all set. And then we remember, for those of you that were here last year, we upgraded all of the screens in the classrooms to those touch view screens at Metcalf. And this budget with the transfer of funds into the capital technology line, in the operating budget right now is like $160,000 worth of touch screens for the junior and senior high school. They would completely come out of the operating budget. And then we would do a 2-year phase in, about $80,000 per year over the next 2 years to get the junior and senior high school up to date as well, which is really exciting. And then the van, which Stacy, I cannot believe that you didn't just jump up and say,
Yeah. You already talked about
yeah,
it.
please do.
So in the budget is a request for a 15-passenger van so that our career and tech students can be able to get out into the community, do work-based learning, go to service learning trips. For instance, our child development kids travel to both Metcalf and Allen, and right now we have to get a bus to pay for them to go. So the cost of the bus will easily be offset by this van. We have several teachers who are going to go get licensed to drive the van, so they'll be able to just take their students out with various trips, various leadership conferences and whatnot. So I've been begging for a few years, and now we have, with the number of programs we have and the kids involved in the timing. It's okay.
The maintenance of that van is done by our internal budgets.
What's that?
Will the maintenance of the van, will we be handling maintenance of the van, the oil changes, tires?
Some of that we do, some of it we have to send out. We just don't have, there's no power down in our big shed to do it. So during the daytime, if it's warmer, they'll do an oil change on like our trucks and things like that, but in the dead of winter. There's no lights and there's no heat down there, so I'm not sending my guys out to crawl under a van on a full cement to change the oil.
Do we have the budget for the regular maintenance of the vehicle?
Yeah, so,
Yes.
we have a line for that.
Yep.
And because we have trucks
Yeah.
right now that we
Yeah,
currently
there's like-
service.
Vehicle maintenance, there's also, there's two separate lines, one for when we like buy the products, or one if we send it out. We kind of split it. You know, I mean, some of the repairs, my guys will do, like they put starters in and things like that, they'll do specific tasks that, you know, it's gonna cost us $600 there and the starter's $80, and we can do it easily, we do it. I mean, we're not, you know, pulling motors or anything like that, but they'll do general repairs on stuff. But, no, they're pretty good. Actually, I have a licensed mechanic on staff right now. One of my maintenance guys is ASC certified
And
mechanic.
Steve was involved in finding.
Yeah, I actually went out there.
Passenger transit, high ceiling.
That's why if we can get the transfer, we can put the bid out.
No, I know what I know what it's out there, and
Cause it's.
Well, take care of us, well, I mean, again,
I
our
saw
trucks
it.
get a lot of use. But this year, we're very lucky we're not having any snow, so it's not doing any damage to the salt.
Better knock on something right now.
Yes, because the salt destroys our truck. The 2012 is fairly rusty right now. We're trying to keep that together. And it runs great, and we're just keeping the chassis as clean as possible. We hose it down all, since I took over, we hose down all the vehicles. Prior to that, they really weren't hot water hose down. Now they
Yeah.
are.
Get under in the spring with some WD-40.
Yeah, we
spray.
actually looked into getting food film, and it's fairly inexpensive for the kids. But I don't know if it'll work on the 2012, it'll work on the 2012 might be just
I
beyond that.
I had a truck that I sent to Maine and every year, and the stuff they put on the roads up there is horrible.
Yep.
But every spring I just get under there with a can of WD-40, penetrating oil, coat it all down.
Yeah, the food film isn't that expensive, it's fairly inexpensive, and it's sprayed with a regular undercoat gun. I've done it before, so.
And I will say, most of the career tech centers in the state do have some kind of transportation that they use in-house, so they don't have to sell.
Because you get to the point where the expense for purchasing buses for all of the required competitions and site-based learning exceeds the cost of a brand new van. So we've determined that this year is the cut point where it is, you know, it's a benefit to us to spend the money up front, and we'll recoup the money in other expenses that are not in the budget, like the field trip costs. For buses that often don't have drivers, which has been the other problem we
Yes.
have,
Yeah,
so,
that kind of thing,
Yeah.
this year is just not having the drivers.
That has to be treated like a bus too. I have to bring that down to the Rhode Island Inspection Station in Providence every year.
Mhm.
And they go through it, they do the brake check, they check it unbelievably, thorough that way. They don't
Yeah,
listen to shit,
chauffeur's license to drive it.
right? A lot, well, I don't have to, because I don't have kids.
Yeah.
Just bring it together.
and Tish just pointed out to me, there's a discussion that we had, we do have a couple of athletic teams that are so small that if the van is not being utilized
Thought that was.
for a CTE based program, and we have what's your team?
Cross country,
The cross-country team with how many kids?
12, 13.
Okay, that need to go to a meet, and rather than paying for a bus and driver,
I'll get my
Steve?
chauffeur's license.
can grab his chauffeur's license and he can drive the kids.
And we
I
did-
think Justin's got dibs on it too.
Golf team.
Yeah.
Probably the golf team, the tennis team,
Yeah.
those small teams. You know,
So there's a lot of ways that we end up saving money by having to spend now.
Does anybody have any more questions for me?
Yes, I know Steve has to head out.
I'm good, Steve.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions concerning the budget for any of the administrators?
All your needs, you feel like everything is addressed, but you're just waiting that you've been asking for. Nothing really outstanding.
I wouldn't say there's nothing. You guys want Jim to micro moment? Is that? I think we have.
Yeah, the school committee is very supportive. Jim works with us on the needs that we have ongoing to make sure that we find a way to get it in the budget, so.
Jeremy's a whole other story. You'll get used to this. But Jeremy's needs, I mean, we have this list of $1 million worth of possible things that we could do to address some of the cybersecurity recommendations. But we're not implementing every single thing at the same time. We're implementing a significant amount.
It's possible.
Yes.
Jeremy's been treated very well over the years.
And he'll be back in front of you next year with a whole new list of items. I'm sure you would have.
And on the other hand,
But it's all,
evaluate how much risk we're willing to take on, some of the things. I don't know that we need to go to the lengths that a bank needs to go to here. We don't need to get to the NIS 215 as a school district. We'll probably move between 1 and 2. And CISA agreed with our cybersecurity advisor said that, he's like, you don't need to get more 5 because you're not 4 times.
yeah, in fact, the last time that we met with him, we talked about some of the things that we maintained in the budget, and he was very satisfied with the steps that we're taking. In terms of the recommendations and our need to progress, he was very satisfied. That's why we decided to keep what we kept in and why we decided to remove, most likely temporarily, the items that we removed.
We are pushing forward, with some other resources too. If in my capacity of this week, we're putting together a cybersecurity summit this in March. We're gonna bring together the director of the CISO from the state, the head of the trust, all the people from CISA, the state police cyber task force, and just talk about the resources that are out there, where we can work together and maybe do some of the stuff as a group instead of everybody buying their own, save money that way. So we're doing everything we can, because everybody's in the same boat. And then both that way.
Well, hearing no more questions, I move to adjourn this meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor? Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.